Hey everyone, how you doing? I just want to begin by saying a really big thank you to everybody who has commented on this video series that I'm doing. Also, for everybody who has liked and shared the videos and subscribed. You know, it's important, because out there's if you try to find videos on how to overcome gambling addiction, or how to get help with stop gambling and things like that, it's really tough. There's nothing really on YouTube about that subject, and I've spent some time trying to look, but all you seem to do is get videos of influencers on gambling sites come up, or you get pop-ups for ads asking you to download apps for casinos and slot machines. So it's a bit tough on YouTube, especially for people who are desperately looking to try and find an answer to what's going on with them. So I really do appreciate it. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not a therapist. I had many years of experience with gambling and all the misery that it brings. And my intention for doing these videos is to try and offer some of my experience. Now, when I say if you've watched any of these videos, that they're a little bit different, because I don't really talk about my gambling much. I talk about what was going on in my head. You know, because I could sit there and talk about how horrendous and how horrendous my gambling became, and how it progressed, and how isolated and absolutely devastated and defeated I was at the end. But my story isn't going to stop you from gambling. Your own story won't stop you from gambling if you're a gambling addict. So therefore, there's very little chance that my story is going to stop you from gambling if you're a gambling addict. My story doesn't even stop me from my story, no matter how bad or difficult it got, never had the power to stop me from gambling. So for me to think that my story could prevent you from gambling is a bit foolish and a bit strange if you're a gambling addict. If you have a problem with gambling, then that stuff might work. Listening to other people's stories and getting identification and stuff like that might work. But if you're a gambling addict, you're certainly not going to remember me when you're going to place your first bet. You're certainly not going to remember my story when you go to the casino or make a deposit in an online casino or something, or put your money in the slot machines or anything like that, because you're not even going to remember your own story to prevent you and stop you from doing it. And if you do, it's just going to be a fleeting glimpse, and you're going to do it anyway. That's been my experience. With gambling addiction, addiction means, my understanding of addiction means a lack of choice, compelled to do something you don't want to do necessarily. Now, I would gamble when I would gamble when I had a fierce determination not to gamble. I would gamble when I needed to desperately not gamble. I would gamble even when I was obsessed about not gambling. That's how it was for me. You know, at a certain point, something would just click within my mind, and I would go back to gambling time and time and time again. Now, the difference between a gambling addict and someone who has a gambling problem, there is a difference. Not all people who gamble become gambling addicts, and not all people who gamble heavily are gambling addicts. Now, so just as an example, somebody could go out over many periods, over a period of time, and lose money, and then go back and lose money and lose a large amount of money, and then just go, right, that's it, I'm done, I've had enough, and then not do it again. But with a gambling addict, they don't have the power to be able to pull that off. Now, some people say that gambling addicts gamble because of their feelings and stuff like that. I used to gamble when I felt good. I gambled when I felt bad. I gambled when I really didn't feel either good nor bad. And I don't know whether that's an experience that you've had. So in that situation, we can see that it didn't matter what I was feeling, whether I was feeling good, whether I was feeling bad, whether I was feeling different. My feelings really didn't come into it. So if it wasn't my feelings, what was going on? I mean, I know today that my gambling was a result of my continuation of gambling was a result of my inability to prevent myself from doing it, my powerlessness over my gambling addiction. Now, some people say that you just have to make the right decisions and the right choices. If you can choose not to gamble permanently, then you're not addicted. And I know this sounds simple, because it is. I mean, if you can, the nature of addiction is that the overriding thought that overcomes everything else. So if you can choose not to do it, you're not a gambling addict, which is good. If you choose not to do it, but continue to do it, even though you've chosen not to do it, then there's something else going on, isn't there? So why would we continuously go back to gambling when we have such a strong determination not to do it? I mean, we look at, if you think about the consequences of your gambling. I'm sure many who are watching this have a whole host of experiences of pain and shame and stuff like that arises from gambling. So if it brings misery, if it brings nothing but misery, why do you continue doing it? It just doesn't make sense. And that's the thing with gambling addiction. It doesn't make sense. It's baffling. Whereas with somebody who has a problem with gambling, if they just stop gambling, then the problem stops. But with a gambling addict, with the gambling addict, we tend to know that the only way to find recovery is to stay stopped permanently. And but how do we do that? That's the crux of the problem. How can we do that if we don't have the power to do that? I know time and time again I tried, failed, continuously. No matter how bad the situation got, I always found myself back to square one. And I see this with people making comments on videos on YouTube, is like really desperate to stop, and people saying, "Oh, it's a matter of will. It's a matter of will. You've just got to have the willpower to do it." It's not as easy as that. It's not as easy as that. If you have a gambling addiction, there's as far as I'm concerned, the gambling addiction centers within the mind. It's like your mind's constantly working against you in order to in order to carry on and continue gambling, and it's not something that we're choosing to do, and saying that it's an illness is not a cop-out neither, because when you recognize it as an illness, it's quite frightening. It is quite frightening. It's not an illness in the sense of Parkinson's or anything like that. This is an illness that centers within our mind, which is why we can't think our way out of it. So it's like some people say, just think and remember all the pain and suffering that you've gone through, and just don't do it. But if you could think and remember all the pain and suffering that gambling has caused you at all times, then that would be, to prevent you, then that would be great. But what if you can't do that? Because at certain times we find ourselves, and I'm sure you've experienced it, you've had that real strong absolute, right, that's it, I'm not doing it again, I'm giving up, and I'm gonna change my life, I'm gonna do this, and really believe 100% that you are going to do it. Really believe that I am not going to gamble again. I am going to change my life. I'm going to transform my life. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of losing my money. And you're absolutely convinced that you will, that it'll work. But I'm sure you've had that experience where, despite having that strong determination and everything, there is a certain point of time is reached when something clicks within our head, and we end off gambling again. Now, like I say, people say, some people say that we gamble, feelings and emotions make us gamble. But if you're feeling happy, then you gamble. If you're feeling sad, then you gamble. If you're feeling indifferent, and you gamble. How do you know, again, that explanation just doesn't make sense. I am of the opinion that the thing that's really helped me is to really recognize that when it comes to gambling, I am completely powerless. And it's like, again, people don't like to admit that in this age of self-reliance and, go get everything, and I mean, people don't want to admit they're powerless over something. But it's with gambling addiction. I mean, if you've got power over gambling, you're not a gambling addict. That's the thing. So admitting we're powerless over something doesn't mean that I can't do it. There's a lot of rehabilitation centres and therapists and well-meaning people like that trying to get us to realise, or trying to get us to just accept that we can't gamble. Yeah, you've just got to realise you can't do it, and don't do it. But it doesn't work like that, because we know we can't do it. We know we shouldn't do it. But we still do it anyway, knowing that we can't and shouldn't. Because we can't stop or prevent ourselves from doing it. We're not choosing to do it. No. There might be some dialogue in the mind. So this is the thing. It's really important to look at what's going on in our mind before we gamble, and try and identify what's going on in our minds before we gamble. Half the time we don't have a clue. I don't know. You know. Or some might say, well, I want to get some more money. But if all of your experience indicates that you can never win because you can never walk away, and you've got years upon years upon years upon years upon years of consequences, experiences, self-harm attempts, suicide attempts, breakup of marriages, homelessness, relationship breakdowns, family rejection, job losses. If you've got all of that information within your mind about what you've experienced and what you've gone through, and you still can't not gamble, despite all the evidence to the contrary to say that you can't and shouldn't, what's going on? To be powerless over something means you're going to do it. To be powerless over gambling doesn't mean that you can't gamble, it means that you will. We spend a lot of time saying to ourselves, I can't gamble, I can't gamble, I can't gamble, rather than saying, I am going to gamble. I am going to gamble. And looking for a solution to give us that power within our minds to protect us. Because we think that all I've got to do is just keep gritting my holding on and telling myself I can't do it. But eventually the point will come where you will gamble again, even though you know you can't and shouldn't. That's guaranteed. You might have already experienced that yourself already. So that's the difference between the gambling addict and the person who has a problem with gambling. The person who has a problem with gambling will get to a point where there's like, right, fuck that, I've had enough, and basically stop of their own power through remembering and listening to people's stories. And like I go back to the beginning of the video, people who have a problem listening to stories of gambling will be able to stop themselves, feel inspired, feel empowered not to do it. Gambling addicts, that doesn't work, because like I say, you're not going to remember that you've even watched this video the next time you gamble. You're not going to remember the pain and the misery and the suffering of last week, yesterday, this morning, or whenever, because you're not going to be able to recall it within your mind with enough power to stop you doing it. So this is what is meant by being powerless over gambling. And I'm using the 12-step analogy here because I believe that the 12-step program has it bang on, absolutely spot on, with the nature and function of gambling addiction and many addictions. you know. And when I talk about the 12 steps, I mean, people's like, oh, duh. You know, it's there's a lot of negative connotations towards the 12 steps. But the thing is, from experience, not many people actually work the 12 steps in order to find their recovery. I would suggest anybody who is struggling to really try and find somebody who understands, first of all, what gambling addiction is, and then secondly, how to recover from it. There is people out there, I'm sure, who understand, really understand what it means to be powerless over your addiction, and what it means, and what the second part of that step means about life, admitting that life had become unmanageable. Now, I'm sure me talking about the 12-step programs raising heckles on the back of people's heads, back of people's necks, and it could have some aversion, but for me, if lack of power is the problem, and the 12-step program allows you to connect with some power that will stop you from time and time and time again, repeatedly going back to gambling, becoming insane, or end up committing suicide, then surely it's worth a shot. Surely it's worth a shot to find somebody who can, at the very least, take you through the first 3 steps in order to find somebody who can take you through the rest. The first step, 1, 2, 3, is where you get some power, make a decision, and then you go through with the rest of the steps, and that's where you get the power at the end. But you develop it as you're going through. Yeah, I feel there's so much pain and so much real unhappiness and misery out there, stemming from gambling, and there's so few resources. Again, try and look on YouTube for anything. Yes, there's a lot out there to try and to address problem gambling, where you have people telling their stories and stuff like that. But how do you recover and have a transformation within your mind to the point where you feel excited about life again, where you are not afraid of gambling again, where you know that you're looked after, where you know that you never have to go back to that. I mean, that's what the 12-step program, in its purest form, in its original form, promises. I mean, one of the promises of the 12-step program is you'll know new freedom. And that's got to be worth a punt. that's got to be worth a bet. That's got to be worth a punt. It's like, well, you're promising me a new freedom. Well, that's what it is. Is it not worth? Is life not that bad enough for you to want to at least try? I mean, if you understand that you are powerless over gambling and that you are going to gamble again, whether you like it or not, because you don't have the power to choose whether you do or don't, you know, and if the 12-step program is promising you a new freedom, promising you power, if the root of the problem is a lack of power and the solution is finding power, and the 12-step program has the ability to do that, to provide you with the power that's needed to protect you from gambling, then surely it makes sense to do it. To find somebody who understands the nature of the problem, but also understands the nature of the solution. And there will be people out there. There will be people out there. Anyway, this is all I've got. I don't know whether I've made any sense. But like I say, I'm just putting all these videos out. Because I think they're needed. You know, my life today is immeasurably better than I could have possibly imagined 15 years ago, 20 years ago. You know, I'm not perfect, far from it, but I am nowhere near experiencing that real awful, twisted place that I used to be. You know, we can do things. We can do things straight off to help us and assist us in recovery. I mean, I've discussed with somebody. If online gambling is the issue that you are struggling with, if that's your addiction, there is things that you can do in order to help give you a little bit of space. I mean, there's a company called Gamblock, and you can download software to place onto your devices, so your PC, laptop, phone, whatever. It's not expensive in comparison to the amount of money that you lose gambling, but it's tamper proof. Once you put it on, you can't take it off, and it will stop you from accessing any form of gambling online like that. It's a fantastic piece of kit that helps people get a bit of space in order to begin the journey of recovery. So if that is the issue, an issue that you're dealing with, there is those there. Also, I would suggest, if you're looking for literature to help bring about your recovery, try and find, and I know this might sound a bit weird, but try online and find a PDF copy of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the original form of the 12-step program, and sit and have a read of it from the very beginning right the way through. Don't rush it. So go through the first edition, preface to the first edition, all that kind, all the preface and all that. Just go through everything. Just sit and read it, and try and look for things you can identify with. Because if you read it, you might find that what they're talking about is similar to what you're experiencing with gambling addiction. So I'll leave it there. Take care.